Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Duke, and welcome to The Takeaway. You'd have thought that the Obama era came to an end when it came to big budget spending. We have Republicans in the House and the Senate. We've got a tough-talking president, and yet we get one of the worst budgets in the history of the American Republic, if you can still call it a republic, joined today by Alex Newman to talk about all the bloated spending that's going, believe it or not, to our failed education system, paying more for less. Alex, talk about your article.
That's right. Thank you, Duke. And, to his credit, Trump, who signed this monstrosity of an omnibus spending bill, actually requested significant budget cuts at the Department of Education. I mean, it wasn't nearly enough. Really, we're talking peanuts compared to the amount of money they've spent. But they asked for about $10 billion in cuts across a wide range of programs, including eliminating some, crucial programs that the establishment relies on, like a lot of the data gathering. And they really wanted big budget cuts at the data mining operation, the Institute for Education Sciences. So there were a number of very, very good things in the budget Trump proposed. Unfortunately, not only did Congress ignore his proposed cuts, they boosted spending in a lot of these things. They added new programs, which are just horrendous. And unfortunately, not only did we not get any progress, we got more spending, more bloated education programs. And this from a president who on the campaign trail said we ought to abolish the U.S. Department of Education. So disappointing would be putting it very, very mildly.
How bad is it when you've got Democrat politicians and left-wing educrats in stunned, joyous disbelief that they got a huge raise across the board for all these failed educational programs? So, Mom and Dad America, not only are your kids learning at a lower rate, a less advanced rate than at almost any time in the last 100 years, not only are your kids falling farther and farther behind the other industrialized nations in the world, but the teachers and the schools and the failed systems are getting more money for teachers' unions, more money to data mine your kids, more money for sex ed for your kids that you don't want in the classrooms, elementary school classrooms. All that stuff got funded. And you can say what you will. The Republicans, Trump tried to cut it. The Republicans added more, and Trump signed it, right? Is there any way to spin that positively, Alex?
There's not. It's a disgrace. It's an abomination. Every Republican in Congress ran on a platform of cutting spending, reining in the bloated government, not funding the baby butchers at Planned Parenthood, the ones who are spreading their vile sex education, so-called, into our government schools. And yet Planned Parenthood got $500 million. The U.S. Department of Education got billions of dollars of new spending and new programs. As you mentioned, you had literally far left Democrats like Patty, what's her last name? Patty Murray up in Washington State, one of the fringe left-wingers in Congress, openly celebrating the fact that the Republican Congress adopted this monstrosity. So this is terrible. If there was any silver lining to this, and I don't know that you could even consider anything a silver lining when looking at this abomination, but they did not pass, billions more in so-called school choice money, which they had been plotting, which is basically an effort to federalize and shut down real school choice, right? By putting private schools and Christian schools out of business, and by trapping all these other schools into the regulatory behemoth that requires Common Core, that requires Bible bans, that requires all the rest of it. So that was the only bright side to this, but it was just atrocious. There is no putting a positive spin on this. Trump defenders and apologists are going to have a real hard time putting lipstick on this pig. And, it's the fault of Congress and Trump and the voters for allowing this to happen. And, as I conclude in my the takeaway, parents, give it up, right? You're not going to get the schools improved through the political process. Members of Congress do not care that you don't want your kids dumbed down and indoctrinated. The only option you have left as a parent is to get them out.
Yeah, I agree. And it's worse than that, Alex. I mean, think about what's happening in Oklahoma, Kentucky, West Virginia, where school teachers have walked out on your kids. I suppose the best thing that could happen to your kids in government schools, Mom and Dad America, is that the teachers leave. The best possible thing that could happen to your kids if you got them in public schools is the walkout. You better hope that the local legislatures in places like Oklahoma, Kentucky, West Virginia refuse to give these people anything, because the longer they're out of the classroom, the more your kids don't fall farther behind. So it's really that bad. And with all of that, they walk out on your kids in the middle of a school year. They hold your kids literally as human bargaining chips to get more money. And look, we know, Alex, you can't completely or even mainly in most instances, blame teachers. They've got a curriculum that they didn't write. They've got a testing program that they didn't sign on for. And yet, nonetheless, I mean, when it comes to money, the unions are the same way. The first priority of teachers' unions is to look after teacher pay. It has nothing to do with educating your kids. The government schools, as we now know, even when you have, for a very few short months, I think, Alex, given the way they're behaving, you have Republicans in control of government. Not sure that's going to last much beyond November. How do you make an argument that the Republicans deserve the votes of moms and dads who have kids in public schools? How do we make that argument moving forward?
I don't think you can. And in fact, I've talked to a lot of conservatives who say, you know what, why should we even go out and vote? It was bad enough under the Democrats, but even they never passed a budget this massive and this abominable, right? Even the Democrats with Obama as president didn't dare to pass something so monstrous. And yet now, under Republican control, they pass record spending on these horrifying programs that all of them campaigned against. And, I think you're right that Republicans probably have a lot to fear in this coming election because the base is going to stay home. They've been betrayed one too many times.
Well, and you can't point to one single piece of evidence, not one, that suggests that all this money and more money now being dumped into the government school system is improving anything. It's not. And that's the thing that's so frustrating about this. You're giving money to a corrupt organization that is failing across the board in educating our kids, failing in every conceivable way to educate our kids. And yet the response is it's still not enough. And next year, Mom and Dad America, when your kids are a little bit dumber, a little bit less prepared, a little bit more sexualized, a little bit quicker to reject your values, Mom and Dads, maybe call out your gun ownership. Well, that seems to be what all these public school kids are doing now. And next year, when your kids are farther behind, the teachers are going to ask for more money to fix it, mark my words. And Republicans will give it to them.
Yep. You're right. It really is disgraceful. And, we didn't even talk about the fact that this is all unconstitutional. The federal government has no authority to be spending money or meddling in education. In fact, the 10th Amendment specifically prohibits federal involvement in education or schools. Any powers not delegated to the federal government under the Constitution are reserved to the states or to the people. There are no powers delegated over education. Therefore, it is prohibited. It is against the Constitution for the federal government to be involved here. And unfortunately, they don't care. Maybe they can't read, right? Maybe that's the problem. Maybe they went to government school. They don't know how to read, so they can't read the Constitution that they put their hand on the Bible and swore an oath to uphold. It's disgusting. It's despicable, Duke. And I think parents need to do the right thing now and protect their own kids from this.
Well, Alex, thank you for your takeaway. Moms and dads, take away your kids from these failed public schools before it's too late. Alex, thank you. We'll see you next week.